The massive space station hung in the void like a glittering city made of metal and light. Inside the central chamber, beings from across the galaxy gathered around a circular table that could have held a small building. Some floated in tanks of colored gas, others appeared as shifting patterns of energy, and a few looked almost normal except for their blue skin or extra arms. Dr. Lisa Martinez adjusted her simple black suit and tried not to stare. She had studied alien biology for 20 years, but seeing them in person was different. Next to her, Captain Jake Sullivan sat with the relaxed posture of someone who had faced worse things than a room full of aliens. Behind them, 3 other humans completed Earth's first diplomatic team to the Galactic Council. The species designation human will now present themselves for evaluation, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lisa stood first. I'm Dr. Lisa Martinez, Earth's chief xenobiologist. We're honored to be here. A creature that looked like a walking tree covered in crystals leaned forward. I am Counselor Vexithron of the Eternal Dominion. We must begin with basic biological data. What is your natural lifespan? About 80 to 100 years, Lisa replied calmly. The chamber went silent. Several aliens made sounds that their translators couldn't process. A being made of flowing silver light flickered rapidly. You mean your bodies last 80 years before requiring renewal? Asked another voice. This came from something that looked like a floating jellyfish made of stars. No, Jake said, speaking for the first time. We mean we live for 80 years, then we die. Permanently. The silence stretched longer this time. Lisa could see alien eyes, sensors and other detection organs all focused on the human delegation. She felt like a bug under a microscope. Define permanently, said Vexthron slowly. Our consciousness ends, Lisa explained. Our thoughts stop. Our memories disappear. We cease to exist as individuals. A creature that looked like a giant insect began making rapid clicking sounds. Its translator finally caught up. Impossible. No intelligent species accepts permanent cessation. You must have backup systems, consciousness transfers, or regeneration protocols. We don't, Jake said with a slight smile. When we die, that's it. Game over. But you know this will happen? Asked the jellyfish being whose name Lisa had learned was Ambassador Zethkara. Of course, Lisa said. We've always known we would die someday. And you are not constantly terrified? Vexthran's crystals pulse different colors. You do not spend every moment seeking immortality? Lisa laughed, which caused several aliens to recoil. Some people do, but most of us just live our lives. We have families, careers, hobbies. We try to make the time we have count. This is fascinating, said a new voice. A creature that looked like a walking pillar of blue metal spoke from across the chamber. We are the Mordani Collective. We back up our consciousness every 7 rotations. If our primary form is destroyed, we simply download into a new body. Are you saying humans have no such safety measures? None, Jake confirmed. If I get shot tomorrow, that's the end of Jake Sullivan. There's no backup copy, no way to bring me back. But surely you must live in constant fear, pressed Zethkara, knowing that any action could result in permanent termination? Lisa exchanged a glance with Jake. How could they explain something so basic? We learn to live with it, I guess. Death is just part of life for us. Part of life. Vexthran's crystals flashed bright red. Death is the opposite of life. It is the ultimate failure, the complete negation of existence. Maybe for you, Jake said. For us, it's just something that happens. Like getting old or getting sick. We don't like it, but we accept it. A new voice joined the conversation. This one came from a being that looked like it was made of living glass. I am Healer Sindar of the Restoration Guild. We have eliminated death through constant cellular renewal. Our oldest members have lived for 100,000 years. Surely you must envy such longevity. Lisa thought about her grandmother, who had died peacefully at 93 after telling stories to her great-grandchildren until the very end. I think my grandmother had a good life at 93 years. I'm not sure she would have wanted to live for 100,000. Why not? Asked several voices at once. She said she was ready, Lisa replied. She had done what she wanted to do, loved the people she wanted to love, and seen her family grow up. She was satisfied. Satisfied with termination? Vexthron sounded genuinely puzzled. This makes no logical sense. Jake leaned back in his chair. Look, we're not trying to convince you that death is good. We're just telling you how it is for humans. We know we're going to die, so we try to make our lives meaningful while we have them. But what about your achievements? Asked the glass being. Your memories, your experiences, your accumulated wisdom, all lost forever? We pass what we can to our children, Lisa said. We write books, create art, teach others. Part of us continues even after we're gone. But you don't continue, insisted Zethkara. The individual consciousness that is Lisa Martinez will be gone forever. Yes, Lisa agreed simply. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds. The translators gave up trying to convert most of it, but Lisa caught fragments. Impossible. Evolutionary dead end. Mental illness. Contamination risk. Finally, Vexthran called for order. This session will be suspended while the council deliberates. Humans will be assigned quarters and provided with necessities while we determine the appropriate response to this situation. As the aliens filed out, Jake turned to Lisa. Well, that went better than expected. Better? Lisa asked. They didn't immediately declare us insane and have us destroyed, Jake said with a grin. I call that a win. Lisa looked around the empty chamber. Through the massive windows, she could see stars scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, with its 6 billion humans who all knew they would die someday, and somehow found ways to be happy anyway. She wondered if the aliens would ever understand that knowing about death didn't make humans weak. Maybe it made them stronger. After all, when you knew your time was limited, you learned not to waste it. The next few days would tell them whether the galaxy was ready for that lesson. 3 months had passed since the humans arrived at the Galactic Station. Dr. Lisa Martinez had grown used to the strange looks from alien beings as she walked the corridors. Most avoided her entirely, as if death might be contagious. A few brave scientists approached her with endless questions about human psychology, trying to understand how a species could function while knowing about mortality. The morning everything changed started like any other. Lisa was in her assigned laboratory, studying samples of alien plant life when alarms began blaring throughout the station. The lights shifted to a harsh red color, and the station's artificial intelligence announced an emergency council session. In the great chamber, panic filled the air. Beings that had seemed calm and wise now moved frantically, their various forms of communication creating a noise that even the advanced translators struggled to handle. At the center of it all, a massive holographic display showed something that made Lisa's blood run cold. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a hurricane a breeze. The thing was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in machinery that hurt to look at directly. Around it, space itself seemed to bend and twist in unnatural ways. The Void Seekers have returned, announced Counselor Vexithran, his crystal body pulsing with distressed colors. Long-range sensors detected this harvester approaching the Kepler system. Current estimates show arrival in 72 hours. Lisa knew about the Kepler system. It was home to a civilization called the Nali, who had not yet developed space travel. 12 billion beings living on a blue-green world not unlike Earth, unaware that death was approaching from the stars. What's a harvester? Asked Captain Jake Sullivan, who had been called to the emergency session along with the other humans. The floating jellyfish being, Zethkara, answered with a voice full of ancient fear. The Void Seekers are machine intelligences from beyond our galaxy. They consume entire worlds, converting all matter into energy to fuel their expansion. A harvester can strip a planet bare in days. What about evacuation? Lisa asked. Impossible, said the glass being called Sindar. Our fastest ships could save perhaps 12 million beings in the time available. The rest would perish. Can we fight it? Jake asked, his military mind already working on the problem. Every simulation shows the same result, Vexthran replied. The Harvester's reality distortion field deflects all known weapons. Our combined fleets cannot penetrate its defenses. Lisa watched as alien after alien offered suggestions, each one shot down by the cold mathematics of the situation. The Harvester was too big, too fast, too well defended. The discussion went in circles for hours, always reaching the same conclusion. The Nali civilization would die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Finally, Jake stood up. The simple action somehow commanded attention from beings thousands of years older than humanity. What if someone flew a ship inside the Harvester? He asked. Impossible, Vexthran said immediately. The reality distortions would tear apart any vessel long before it reached the core. But if someone did get through, Jake continued, Could they damage it from the inside? A new voice spoke up. This came from Admiral Chen Li, the highest-ranking human military officer present. Our nuclear physicists ran some calculations. A fusion device detonated inside the harvester's core might cause a cascade failure. The explosion would tear the entire structure apart from within. Might? Asked several aliens at once. 70% probability of success, Chen said calmly. The pilot would need to get within 100 meters of the core and manually trigger the device. And the pilot? Zethkara asked, though something in her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Dead, Jake said simply. The radiation alone would kill anyone in about 30 seconds. Add in the reality distortions and the fact that the entire harvester would explode. There's no way back. The chamber fell silent. Lisa could see the confusion and horror on alien faces as they processed what the humans were suggesting. You are proposing suicide, Fex Thran said finally. We're proposing a mission, Admiral Chen corrected. A dangerous one with no survivors, but still a mission with a clear objective. This is insanity, declared a being that looked like a walking tree. No rational creature volunteers for certain death. I'll do it, said a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see Commander Rick Hayes, one of the human pilots who had escorted the diplomatic mission. He was a young man with sandy brown hair and an easy smile that reminded Lisa of her brother back on Earth. Commander Hayes, report to the front, Admiral Chen ordered. Rick walked through the assembled aliens, who parted before him like he carried some terrible disease. When he reached the center, he saluted crisply. Commander Richard Hayes, Earth Defense Corps, volunteering for the mission, sir. Do you understand what this mission entails? Chen asked formally. Yes, sir. Fly a ship through impossible defenses, penetrate the harvester's core, and detonate a nuclear device. Probability of survival is 0. And you volunteer anyway? Rick's smile never wavered. 12 billion people, sir. That's not really a choice. Lisa watched as alien beings recoiled in shock. To them, Rick might as well have announced his intention to jump into a star for fun. This is madness, Sindar whispered. The human exhibits no signs of mental distress, no indication of suicidal ideation. How can he rationally choose termination? Because it's not about him, Lisa said, finally understanding something that had taken her years to see clearly. It's about them, the 12 billion Nali who don't even know they're in danger. But he will cease to exist, Vexthran protested. Permanently, forever. Yeah, Rick said with a shrug. But they won't. Seems like a fair trade to me. I volunteer as backup pilot, said another human voice. Then another. Within minutes, Rick's entire squadron had volunteered for a mission that promised certain death. The aliens watched in stunned silence as humans calmly discussed the technical details of their own destruction. They talked about ship modifications, approach vectors, and timing as if they were planning a routine patrol instead of elaborate suicide. I don't understand, Zethkara said finally. How can your species function when any individual will willingly choose non-existence? Lisa thought about her grandmother again, about firefighters running into burning buildings, about soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their friends. Maybe that's exactly why we function so well, she said quietly. Admiral Chen was already working with the station's engineers, planning modifications to a fast attack ship that could carry the nuclear device. The alien engineers worked with obvious reluctance, as if building the ship made them accomplices to murder. As the meeting broke up and beings scattered to prepare for the impossible mission, Lisa found herself standing next to Rick Hayes. Aren't you scared? She asked. Rick considered the question seriously. A little, he admitted. But mostly I'm thinking about those Nali kids who get to grow up because of this. That's worth being scared for. Lisa nodded, understanding at last why the galaxy found humans so disturbing. It wasn't that they accepted death. It was that they could choose it for something greater than themselves. The countdown to the Kepler system had begun, and with it, humanity's first real test in the galactic community. They would either save 12 billion lives or die trying. For humans, those weren't really different things. The ship looked wrong. Even Dr. Lisa Martinez, who had never been military, could see that the modifications to the attack vessel had turned it into something that barely resembled a spacecraft. Extra shielding covered every surface, making it look like a flying metal cocoon. The nuclear device took up most of the cargo bay, leaving just enough room for a single pilot. Commander Rick Hayes walked around his ship one final time, checking systems that everyone knew wouldn't last more than a few minutes in the reality distortions around the Void Seeker harvester. He moved with the calm efficiency of someone performing a routine inspection, not someone preparing for certain death. The observation deck of the Galactic Station was packed with representatives from 40 different species. All of them had come to watch something they couldn't understand. A being voluntarily choosing permanent termination to save others. Final systems check complete. Rick reported over the communication system. Ship is ready for launch. Admiral Chen Li stood at the command station, his face showing no emotion. Commander, you are cleared for departure. Good luck. Thank you, sir, Rick replied. See you on the other side. The casual way he said it made several aliens make distressed sounds. There was no other side for Rick Hayes, and everyone knew it. Lisa stood next to Ambassador Zethkara, whose jellyfish-like form flickered with patterns she had learned meant deep confusion. How does he remain so calm? Zethkara asked. He shows no signs of fear, anger, or desperation. His vital signs are almost normal. Because he's doing what he thinks is right, Lisa said, watching Rick's ship move away from the station toward the distant harvester. Humans get calm when they know they're doing the right thing, even if it kills them. But the right thing cannot include self-termination, insisted Counselor Vexthrin, whose crystals pulsed with agitated colors. Preservation of consciousness is the highest moral imperative. Not for us, Lisa said quietly. For humans, some things are more important than individual survival. On the tactical display, Rick's ship appeared as a tiny dot moving toward the massive harvester. The Void Seeker machine was easily visible now, its hull covered in structures that seemed to fold space around them. Just looking at it too long made Lisa's eyes water. Entering outer distortion field, Rick reported. His voice remained steady, but the ship's hull was already beginning to show stress fractures. Switching to manual control. The Galactic Fleet had positioned itself at maximum safe distance, ready to provide covering fire against the smaller machine drones that protected the harvester. But everyone knew they couldn't get close enough to really help. This was Rick's mission alone. Hull integrity at 60%, Rick announced as his ship pushed deeper into the reality distortions. Through the observation windows, Lisa could see the vessel twisting and bending, as space itself became unreliable. Still on course for the core. Dr. Sindar, the glass being who served as the station's chief medical officer, was monitoring Rick's vital signs. His stress hormones are elevated but within normal human parameters, she reported in amazement. He is not experiencing the psychological breakdown we predicted. Why would he? Asked Lisa. He knew this was going to happen when he volunteered. But knowing and experiencing are different things, Vexthran protested. Surely facing imminent termination must trigger survival instincts. Lisa thought about stories she had heard growing up. Firefighters who died saving children from burning buildings. Soldiers who held impossible positions to buy time for evacuations. Parents who gave their lives protecting their families. Humans have strong survival instincts, she agreed. But we also have something stronger, the instinct to protect others. Hull integrity at 30%, Rick reported. His ship was barely recognizable now, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Switching to backup systems. The aliens watched in horrified fascination as the human pilot continued his approach. They had run thousands of simulations, and everyone showed the same result. Any rational being would turn back when faced with certain death. But Rick kept flying toward the harvester's core. I don't understand his psychology, admitted Healer Sindar. According to our models, the fear of permanent cessation should override all other considerations. Maybe that's the problem with your models, Lisa said. You assume everyone thinks like you do. His ship won't hold together much longer, Admiral Chen observed, studying the tactical display. At current rate of deterioration, hull failure in approximately 2 minutes. Will that be enough time? Asked Zethkara. It has to be, Chen replied. Approaching the core, Rick announced. His voice was getting harder to understand as the communication system struggled with the reality distortions. Beginning final approach. Through the static and interference, they could hear him humming something. It took Lisa a moment to recognize the tune, an old Earth song about coming home. Hull integrity at 10%, Rick reported. Core structure visible. Beginning attack run. The harvester's core was a massive sphere of twisted metal and energy, pulsing with power drawn from countless consumed worlds. Rick's ship, barely holding together, swooped toward it like a moth approaching a flame. "I'm getting some interesting readings on the core structure," Rick said, his voice now almost lost in static. "The resonance frequency might be useful for future weapons design. Transmitting data now." Even facing death, the human pilot was gathering intelligence that might help save other worlds. The aliens exchanged looks of bewilderment. "Core breach in 30 seconds, Rick announced. "It's been an honor serving with you all." "The honor has been ours, Commander," Admiral Chen replied formally. "Tell my mom I was thinking about her apple pie," Rick added with a laugh that made the communication system crackle. Lisa felt tears running down her face as she watched the tiny dot that was Rick's ship merge with the massive harvester core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a new star bloomed in space as the nuclear device detonated. The explosion tore through the harvester from within, causing cascade failures that ripped the massive machine apart. Chunks of alien technology scattered across space as the reality distortions collapsed. Within minutes, the greatest threat the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years was reduced to glowing debris. The observation deck was silent, except for the soft sounds of Lisa crying. Around her, aliens stood frozen, trying to process what they had witnessed. "He did it," whispered Zethkara. "The human actually succeeded." "At the cost of his own existence," Vexthran said, his crystals dim with confusion. "How is this considered a victory?" 12 billion Nali get to live," Lisa said, wiping her eyes. "Their children will grow up, fall in love, have children of their own. Entire generations will exist because Rick Hayes chose to die today. How is that not a victory?" "But he is gone," insisted Sindar. "Permanently. His consciousness, his memories, his potential, all lost forever." "No," Lisa said firmly. "Rick Hayes will be remembered. His sacrifice will be told and retold. Parents will name their children after him. His choice will inspire others to make similar choices when the time comes. He's not gone. He's become something larger than himself." The aliens struggled to understand this concept. To beings who had conquered death, the idea that someone could become immortal through dying was incomprehensible. Admiral Chen turned from the tactical display. "The Kepler system is safe. Commander Hayes completed his mission." As the news spread throughout the galactic station, something changed in how the alien beings looked at the humans. It wasn't fear anymore or pity. It was something new, something they didn't have words for in their languages. It was respect for beings who could choose to die for strangers and call it just another day's work. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans didn't consider death their enemy. They considered it another tool, one they would use without hesitation when something more important than their own lives was at stake. The age of humanity and galactic affairs had truly begun. 6 months after Commander Rick Hayes died saving the Kepler system, Dr. Lisa Martinez found herself in a place she never expected to be, standing before the Crystal Council of Mordan Prime, trying to explain why death made humans stronger instead of weaker. The journey to the Mordani homeworld had taken 3 weeks aboard a diplomatic vessel filled with alien philosophers, scientists, and military strategists. All of them wanted to understand the beings who could calmly choose permanent termination and somehow make it work in their favor. The Crystal Council chamber was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Towering beings made of living crystal sat in perfect geometric arrangements, their bodies refracting light into patterns that created music in the air. The Mordani had conquered death eons ago by backing up their consciousness every 7 rotations. When their crystal bodies wore out, they simply grew new ones and downloaded their memories. Dr. Martinez spoke the largest crystal being, whose name translated roughly to eternal facet of the infinite prism. "We have studied your species for half a year, and we remain confused. How can beings who know they will die function as a society?" Lisa had given this speech dozens of times now on dozens of worlds to dozens of species who couldn't understand mortality, but she never got tired of it, because every time she helped someone understand, the galaxy became a little bit more human. "We function because we know our time is limited," she explained. "When you have forever, you can always do things tomorrow. When you know you might die next week, you tend to live more intensely." "But the fear," protested another council member. "How do you overcome the terror of knowing that your consciousness will simply end?" "Most of us aren't terrified," Lisa said. "We're sad about it sometimes. especially when someone young dies or when we lose people we love. But terror? That's not how most humans think about death. She gestured to the holographic display that showed images from Earth. Children playing in parks, artists creating sculptures, scientists working in laboratories, farmers tending crops. These people all know they're going to die someday. Look at their faces. Do they look terrified to you? The crystal being studied the images with senses that could analyze molecular structures and quantum states. They appear content, one admitted, even happy. Because they're living, Lisa said. They're not just existing, they're actively choosing how to spend their limited time. That choice gives their lives meaning. But surely they seek methods to extend their existence, asked Eternal Facet. Technology, medicine, anything to delay the inevitable? Some do, Lisa agreed. We've extended our natural lifespan from about 40 years to nearly 100 over the past few centuries. But most humans don't want to live forever. They want to live well for the time they have. This concept seemed to cause actual distress among the crystal beings. Their light patterns flickered rapidly as they processed the information. We do not understand, admitted a smaller council member. We have lived for millions of years, accumulated vast knowledge, experienced countless wonders. How can anyone choose to give up such possibilities? Lisa smiled, thinking of her grandmother again. My grandmother used to say that a song isn't beautiful because it goes on forever. It's beautiful because it has a beginning, middle, and end. The ending is what gives it shape, makes it complete. Your grandmother is dead? Asked Eternal Facet. Yes, she died when I was 25. And you do not wish to bring her back? To restore her consciousness to a new body? Even if we could, we wouldn't, Lisa said firmly. She lived her life, told her stories, loved her family, and died peacefully. Bringing her back would be wrong, like trying to replay a perfect song over and over until it loses all meaning. The council chamber fell silent except for the musical patterns of light dancing through the crystal structures. Finally, Eternal Facet spoke again. We begin to understand why your species produces individuals like Commander Hayes. When existence is temporary, each moment becomes precious. Exactly, Lisa said. Rick didn't die because he didn't value his life. He died because he valued those 12 billion other lives more. That kind of choice only makes sense when you understand that individual existence isn't the most important thing in the universe. But what is more important? Asked another council member. Lisa thought carefully about her answer. For humans? Other humans usually. Our families, our friends, our children. Sometimes abstract concepts like freedom or justice. The future of our species. The idea that good things should continue to exist even after we're gone. Even if you personally will not exist to see them? Especially then, Lisa said. That's what makes the choice meaningful. If I save someone's life and get to stick around to be thanked for it, that's nice. If I save someone's life and die doing it, that's more pure somehow. It proves I wasn't doing it for personal gain. The implications of this philosophy were already spreading through galactic society. On worlds across the galaxy, young beings from immortal species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Why spend 1,000,000 years on the same hobbies? Why not take risks if consciousness could be backed up anyway? What was the point of experience if it never ended? Some had begun refusing their species' immortality treatments, choosing to live finite lives like humans. Their elders were horrified, but the movement was growing. Admiral Jake Sullivan, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, was experiencing similar philosophical shifts in the military sphere. He stood in the war room of the Galactic Defense Station, surrounded by tactical displays and alien officers who were learning to think like humans. The problem with immortal warriors, Jake explained to a group of Velthari commanders, is that they're too careful. When you know you can be brought back from death, you don't really risk anything. But surely careful tactics preserve more lives, asked Commander Velthok, whose species resembled giant armored insects. In the short term, maybe, Jake agreed. But careful tactics often fail against desperate enemies. When your opponent is willing to die to win and you're not, you're at a disadvantage. He pulled up battle footage from the recent conflicts with Void Seeker scouts. Look at this engagement. The Eternal Dominion fleet retreated when they took 15% casualties. By their standards, that was an acceptable loss rate. And by human standards? Asked Velthok. We'd call that a light skirmish, Jake said bluntly. Human military doctrine assumes 30 to 40% casualties in major engagements. We plan for it, accept it, and fight through it. How is such loss acceptable? Because losing the war is worse than losing soldiers, Jake explained. If we retreat every time we take casualties, we give the enemy time to regroup, reinforce, and come back stronger. Sometimes you have to take heavy losses to prevent even heavier losses later. The alien officers struggled with this concept. Their entire military tradition was based on preserving consciousness at all costs. We have begun implementing your human doctrine in our training scenarios, admitted Velthok. The results are disturbing. Units that accept casualties perform significantly better than those focused on survival. Disturbing how? They win, Velthok said simply. Even when heavily outnumbered, forces trained in human tactics achieve victory through what we can only call controlled suicide attacks. Jake nodded. Now you're getting it. When your soldiers know they might die anyway, they stop being afraid of death and start being afraid of failure. Back on Morden Prime, Dr. Martinez was wrapping up her presentation to the Crystal Council. Humanity's relationship with death isn't a weakness, she concluded. It's our greatest strength. Because we know our time is limited, we use it wisely. Because we can die, we can choose what to die for. And because we accept endings, we make our lives meaningful. Eternal Facet's crystal body pulsed with thoughtful patterns. You have given us much to consider, Dr. Martinez. Perhaps there is wisdom in limitation that we have forgotten in our eternal existence. Maybe, Lisa agreed. But that's for you to decide. We're not trying to convert anyone to mortality. We're just trying to help you understand why it works for us. As she prepared to leave Morden Prime, Lisa reflected on the changes she had seen across the galaxy. Young beings choosing mortality, military forces adopting human tactics, entire civilizations questioning their assumptions about existence and meaning. The galaxy was learning to die. And in doing so, it was learning to truly live. The transformation had only begun, but already it was clear that humanity had given the galaxy something it never knew it was missing. The courage that comes from knowing that some things are worth more than individual survival. The age of careful, immortal civilizations was ending. The age of mortal courage had begun. 2 years after humanity joined the Galactic Council, the final test came from the darkness between stars. Dr. Lisa Martinez, now bearing the title of Chief Human Cultural Advisor, stood in the command center of the largest space station ever built. Around her, holographic displays showed the approaching doom that would determine whether the galaxy had truly learned humanity's lessons about mortality. The Void Seekers had returned in force. Not just one harvester this time, but thousands accompanied by a massive command ship that dwarfed entire moons. Long-range sensors showed their destination, the galactic core, where the densest concentration of inhabited worlds waited helplessly for consumption. Initial projections showed total galactic extinction within 18 months if current advance continues, reported Admiral Jake Sullivan, his hair now gray from 2 years of constant warfare. They're not just harvesting individual worlds anymore. They're consuming entire star systems. Fleet Admiral Chen Li studied the tactical displays with the calm expression that had become his trademark. Estimated enemy force composition? 7,000 harvester units, approximately 50,000 support vessels, and one command nexus roughly the size of Earth's moon, Jake replied. Our combined galactic fleet numbers about 12,000 ships of all classes. Odds? Asked Ambassador Zeth Kara, whose jellyfish-like form now pulsed with patterns that showed she had learned to appreciate human military thinking. In a conventional engagement? 0% chance of survival, Chen answered honestly. But we're not planning a conventional engagement. The assembled leaders represented every major species in the galaxy. Crystal beings from Mordan Prime stood next to energy creatures from the ethereal realms. The gas-breathing Velthari shared space with the machine intelligences of the Silicon Collective. For the first time in galactic history, they were united not just in purpose, but in understanding they had all learned to die. Present the final plan, Chen ordered. Captain Emma Blake, one of the new generation of human officers who had grown up during the galactic integration, activated the main display. Operation Last Stand requires coordinated strikes on 73 specific points across the Void Seeker formation. Each target must be destroyed within a 30-second window to create a cascade failure in their collective network. And the cost? Asked Counselor Vexthrin, whose crystal form had dimmed with acceptance of what was coming. Every ship assigned to the strike missions, Emma said simply. Total casualties estimated at 3 million beings across 47 species. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 3 million conscious beings choosing permanent termination to save the galaxy. Who has volunteered? Asked Eternal Facet of the Mordani, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Everyone, Jake said with quiet pride. Every ship in the fleet has volunteer crews. We had to turn people away. Dr. Martinez watched as the alien leaders processed this information. 2 years ago, the idea of volunteers for certain death would have been incomprehensible to them. Now they understood that some things were worth dying for. The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy called Whisper of the Void, spoke in harmonics that bypassed the translators entirely. The meaning came directly into their minds. Our young ones have learned your ways. They say they would rather cease existing than live in a universe consumed by machines. The same among our kind, added Commander Velthok of the Velthari. Our hive mothers weep for the children they will lose. But they understand the necessity. We have uploaded our most essential consciousness patterns to protected archives, reported the Silicon Collective representative. If we fail, something of our species will survive. If we succeed, we will have earned that survival. Lisa felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. The galaxy had learned humanity's hardest lesson, that individual survival was less important than collective meaning. But the cost of that lesson was about to be measured in millions of lives. Fleet positions? Chen asked. All strike forces are in position, Jake reported. Volunteer crews have completed final preparations. Last messages to families have been transmitted. Then we begin. The battle for the galactic core unfolded across a space larger than entire solar systems. Strike forces composed of beings who had never known mortality, charged into certain death alongside humans who had always understood it. Crystal warriors who could have lived forever chose to shatter themselves against machine shields. Energy beings who could exist as pure thought dispersed themselves to carry bombs into enemy cores. Lisa watched from the command center as tactical displays showed the coordinated sacrifice of millions. Each dot that disappeared represented beings who had learned to value something more than their own existence. Strike Group 7 has reached target, reported a Velthari commander whose voice showed no fear, despite knowing her ship would be destroyed in minutes. Beginning final approach. Strike Group 12 confirms target acquisition, came another voice. This one from an ethereal being who was about to return to the cosmic energy from which she came. One by one, the strike forces reached their targets. One by one, they completed their missions and disappeared from the tactical displays. But with each sacrifice, the Void Seeker network grew weaker. Cascade failure detected in sectors 4 through 9, Emma reported, her voice tight with emotion as she watched friends die for strangers they would never meet. Network integrity dropping, added another officer. The machine intelligence is losing coordination. In the final moments as the last strike forces reached their targets, Dr. Martinez realized that the galaxy had achieved something unprecedented. Not victory through superior technology or overwhelming force, but victory through the willingness to lose everything for a greater purpose. The Void Seeker Command Nexus, faced with opponents who considered death merely another tactic, simply could not compute an effective response. Its entire operational matrix was based on the assumption that conscious beings would prioritize survival above all else. When millions of beings proved that assumption wrong, the machine intelligence experienced something like confusion. Total network collapse confirmed, Chen announced as the last enemy signals faded from the displays. The Void Seekers are retreating beyond the galactic rim. The command center erupted in cheers from dozens of species, but the celebration was muted by the knowledge of what it had cost. 3 million beings had died to save trillions more. They did it, whispered Zethkara. They actually chose to die for us. Not for us, Lisa corrected gently. For the idea that consciousness should continue to exist. For the belief that life has meaning beyond individual survival. For the hope that future generations will build something better than what we have now. In the months that followed, as the galaxy rebuilt and mourned its losses, monuments rose on countless worlds, not to human superiority, but to the concept humanity had taught them, that true immortality came not from preserving individual consciousness, but from choosing what that consciousness was worth dying for. Children of immortal species learned new stories about heroes who gave up eternity for a moment of meaning. Artists created works that captured the beauty of finite existence. Philosophers wrote treatises on the wisdom found in limitation. The galaxy had learned to die, and in learning to die, it had learned to truly live. Dr. Lisa Martinez, now elderly by human standards, stood in her garden on Earth and watched her granddaughter play among flowers that would bloom for a season and then fade. The child laughed with the pure joy of someone who understood instinctively that beautiful things were made more precious by their temporary nature. Somewhere in the galaxy, alien children played in alien gardens learning the same lesson. They were growing up in a universe where death was not feared but respected, where individual sacrifice for collective good was not seen as tragic, but as the highest expression of consciousness. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy had not been technology or wisdom. It had been the understanding that knowing when to die was the most important part of knowing how to live. The age of careful immortality was over. The age of meaningful mortality had begun, and with it a galaxy that finally understood what it meant to be truly alive.